what is your feeling about the study that we will show in terms of the differences in different countries and in different settings? Do you have, I don't know if you have any thoughts on how is the variation in Australia, for instance, or if it's different from regions that are more in city centers compared to more district hospitals that you could share us with?
Thanks, Maria. I don't have any specific information as such, but I guess we can hypothesize that differently resourced countries will be having separate difficulties with addressing our waiting lists at the moment. So certainly within Australia, we, as you all know, we closed our borders for COVID-19 for a very long time. And it meant that our effect on surgery was blunted, but also delayed compared with a lot of the rest of the world. And even within Australia, different states were affected differently by COVID-19. And so a state like New South Wales that was very heavily affected, we're really currently struggling with addressing our inguinal hernia waiting list because of all of the operations that were cancelled in the last 12 months and ongoing issues with staff illness and theatre access for actually catching up on those waiting times.
Yeah, those are very good points, because although the pandemic seems to be over for, I would say, almost 1 year now, we are still very down the line in terms of recovering all the backlog that came from it. And I assume that probably in low and low middle income countries, I would assume that the main problem would still be in the access. So in the beginning of the pathway. So maybe the patients are not in a formal waiting list as a concept that we know that there is a formal decision to surgery, but they are certainly waiting in the community, even if they couldn't be evaluated from a surgical point of view, for instance. And I think that the data that everyone is collecting, I think it will be very useful for us to test these hypotheses and to actually, as you discussed, to inform policymakers and stakeholders about the importance of making this a priority in their agendas, and to improve elective surgery.
In terms of waste management, whether do you think that recycling in theatre is going to be common, and if there is any countries that specifically you think are going to be moving some steps towards that in that direction, or whether it's a common practice, or what your feeling will be, are that what we're going to find basically.
Well, thanks, Virginia. Well, look, I think that in terms of recycling, we are looking in some way the same variability, the same heterogeneity we have maybe in technical practices around inguinal hernia around the world, So there are countries which have a lot of practices involved and right now working on, but also there are places in which there are not a single practice in terms of recycling. And it's quite difficult to imagine that, right? But that's true. So as Maria said before, because HIPPO is focused in a very common surgical procedure, maybe we are looking at this study as a proxy of the entire operating room strategies, which is the nice thing, because even we are not aiming to collect data from all other type of surgeries, maybe we can make at the end some, in some ways, some extrapolations for another type of surgeries, or maybe for another scenarios, including operating rooms, of course. And that's the nice thing, because we don't have too much detail about the recycling strategies in HIPPO study, because we are aiming more in describe what is happening, what is going on there, without going too much deep on the details of recycling. but at least we have a proxy of how strategies are doing right now worldwide. But I can imagine from now that we can get very interesting results. So a lot of variation in practices around the world. Thanks.
So this is the main page for the HIPPO study on the NIHR Global Surgery Unit. So on this, you'll find all the documentation for patient information sheets, case report form, consent. And then, of course, there will be a link just to register your interest, which is what we're looking at right now. So expression of interest. So if you click here, it will take you to the page of the study, which is expression of interest form. And then if you scroll down, what you need to do first and foremost is check that your hospital is not already registered and has a local lead. So you're going to click on here, and that will take you to the app where you can check whether your hospital already has a registered local lead. So in order to identify that, you can enter your country. So let's say United Kingdom, for example, and let's say we're going to go for the Birmingham Hospital, so Queen Elizabeth. Queen Elizabeth in Birmingham. And as you can see, the hospital looks like it's already registered and there is a local lead has been identified. What to do in this case? In this case, there is no, so the local lead is already present, so we can't register another local lead. So what would advise in this case, if you're interested in taking part and your hospital is already registered and local lead has been identified, is to email them and see whether you can be added as a data collector, which will, of course, will make sure that you will contribute to the study. If a hospital is not identified, you can type the hospital in here and would not come up on this list. Therefore, at this stage, you can say that you've checked that there is no local lead for your center, going back to this page that we were on earlier on. So you say, and you can click yes. At this point, you'll be able to enter your details to identify yourself as a local lead. So I'll just use my detail for example. So you put your name, surname, and your Gmail address. You identify your grade, so junior doctor in my case, and then what role you would have to have, you would like to have an HIPPO. In this case, there is no local lead, so let's say I want to be a local lead, I'll identify myself as that. And then you can enter your hospital name. So there is a drop-down list, there's a drop-down list with hospital options. If your hospital doesn't appear, then you can type other hospital and you'll be able to enter all your details and then register your own center. So that will appear then on the list. Then you will be able to add how many elective inguinal hernia surgeries are performed in your hospital about in a month period. And that's kind of for us to know how many cases we can expect your hospital to enter. So it just can be an approximate measure. It doesn't need to be too specific. And then following that, you can click submit, and that will make sure that you're registered as a local lead. So what you can expect after this is that you'll get an email similar to this, saying that you've been registered as a local lead, and basically inviting to your colleagues to join, and then you will get some login information to log into RedCap and perform the team registration, which Maria will tell us more about.
I have, I think, some issues in hospitals that we have in Ethiopia. I found that there are some people who are registered as hospital leads, but they are not being active enough, like they are not collecting data. And when I ask some colleagues that to join, they have a problem, like some of their colleagues are already registered as a lead, so they cannot do anything about it. So is there any way, like if somebody is registered as a lead and is not being active or interested enough, is there a way to switch that person to by somebody else, what
Yeah.
do we do?
So that's definitely a really good question. So thank you very much. And it has happened a few times. So what I want to say first and foremost is that not necessarily the hospital lead needs to collect data. It's just basically there to be a leader and just be a reference from the data collector point of view. But if there is an instance in which a hospital lead does not wish to be a hospital lead anymore, feel like it can't, be involved, or they're busy, or for whatever reason, as long as there is an agreement between the person that was local lead and the person that wants to become the new local lead, you can email to the HIPPO account, the HIPPO Gmail account, and then we can change the hospital lead. But I must stress, there must be an agreement between the two people. So the person that is a local lead, the person that would like to be a local lead, that there needs to be an agreement that the switch has to happen. If there is no agreement, I'm afraid we can't really do much about it, just because, of course, a hospital lead has already been identified. So that has already been put in place from our side. We can't really just change without the other person agreeing. So as long as there is an agreement, then we can switch hospital leads for you.
So just a follow-up question with this. So if there is an agreement, is it going to be the duty of the first registered person to communicate with the HIPPO? Or
either way, either the previous, so the existing hospital lead and the one that wants to become hospital lead can email us. Preferably, the other person should be CC'd in the email, just to make sure that everything is very transparent and that everyone is aware of what is happening. And preferably also the data collectors, because then they are aware that the switch has been made. So if they have any issues, they refer to the appropriate person and they're kept in the loop. And so at least, I would say at least the CC in the email, the other hospital lead, but I would say also the data collectors, just because it makes the process more transparent and just more straightforward.
How long it takes for you to receive the email when you register as the team lead?
So we go through the emails regularly, and then after you register as a team lead, it might take 24 to 48 hours to get the email from RedCap with your login information. And please make sure that you check the spam and the junk email, especially if you have an email from a Gmail account, it can go in the spam. So make sure you check that. So to obtain the login information, 24 to 48 hours. For any other contact email that you send to us, we have a team that looks after the inbox, but it depends on how busy everyone is. We try to look at it to reply in 1 to 2 days, but it can take a little bit longer depending on the days. But we're looking at them constantly. So yeah, I would say, check the spam inbox as well if you haven't received your login information.
So basically, when you enter your RedCap account with a login that was issued to you, you should have access to HIPPO team registration. So you need to click there. And then if you look here in this left column, you have add and edit records. And then you have this green button where you can add a new record. So here you will always find your hospital, because even if it was not listed when you registered yourself as a hospital lead, we've already added to the main list. So it should be here. In case it's not, please email us. You can find here our email that we will add it, but I think that never happened so far. So you can select here which is your hospital. For instance, I will choose anyway. Then we kindly ask you what is the hospital type, just because this will be important to then cross-check data, and even in terms of future analysis. For instance, the waiting times. One of the hypotheses is if the referral hospitals versus non-referral hospitals have longer waiting times than the others. So then you need to make sure that all the study approvals are already in place or will be in place once you start data collection. because if you do not have received any local approval, you will not be able to join the study yet. So then we kindly ask you to fill this with your information of you as the hospital lead. And then in here, you select the periods where you want to collect data. So for instance, let's say if I say period 3, then you will choose how many collaborators will work in this period. And then, as Virginia already said, the hospital lead doesn't need to mandatory collect data, but if they want to, they can as well. So you can add here all the details from each collaborator, so name, ORCID ID, which is where we will then pull to get the authorship from all the papers that are being done for this study. And then in the end, just make sure that you select here complete and you save and exit form. So for instance, if you miss any data, this window will pop up. So you can just say, okay. And if you want to do any changes, let's say if you want to change a period, you will go to this record status dashboard, and then the record that I just filled was the 7. And then you click here, and then you can edit everything. So you can untick period 3, and also these pop-ups will come up, and then you just click OK in everything, and then you will be able to change it. So for instance, period 4, 2 collaborators, and then you fill all the details here. So to help you with all of this process, we developed some YouTube videos that explains what Virginia just described in terms of registration of hospitalists, which is this one. The registration of teams is this one, site and user registration, which will lead you to all the steps that you need to fill. And then we also had a webinar in the past, solving some questions and answers that might be helpful as well. And then the next step after team registration will be data collection. So you will also be able to have access to the project, and it's basically almost the same. So you also have here add or edit records, then you add a new record, and then you need to click on here to know which form are you going to fill in. So this one, the first one, has all the data that is being collected before the patient is being operated. The intraoperative is during the surgery, and the postoperative includes the 30-day follow-up outcomes. And you also have a YouTube video guiding you through the data collection project here in our YouTube page, which you can easily find if you search for HIPPO RedCap. You will end up in this page. And we will disseminate this webinar today here as well.
I just want to say to a few colleagues who are joining from hospitals in rural settings, quite a number of them have had challenges obtaining ethical clearance. And I just want to advise that those who are in such settings should please contact their national leads for assistance with whatever can be done at the national level to help institutions that do not have such facilities to get the ethical clearance on time, because the study has a study duration, and waiting forever to get ethical clearance may make some of those centers miss out on the whole project.
Thank you very much, Wale. I think that you raised a very important point. And actually, if you go to our website, as Virginia showed, you will be able to contact all national leads from there just by clicking the country where you're based. So hopefully that they will be able to help you through that process too.
Those of them who are interested to join on period 3, can they do the data collection of like that of the period 1 and period 2 right now, or they need to go ahead with period 3 and period 4?
So the study was designed to collect data prospectively. So ideally, they should be able to join in period 3 and period 4, definitely. Usually, it might be the case that sometimes the RedCap login take 1 or 2 more days to go to collaborators. So sometimes in the first or in the second day of data collection, people just collect data on paper, but collecting a whole period in terms of now add data from period 1, we would like to avoid that to keep the study consistent and to make sure that all the data is being collected in a prospective way.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Oh, I just saw your question on the chat, Marcus, about eventually adding another time. So that is one of the, in terms of periods, we kept this open in the protocol, as you know, especially because it would be something to evaluate by the end of period 3, considering how many centers we would like for them to join, obviously, because they already initiated all the process, and that still wouldn't be able to take part in the 4th period. So we haven't discussed this yet, because we were expecting to discuss this by the end of period 3, and also to discuss with the national leads from all countries about what is their perspective and what is their views in terms of if this is something that would really make a difference in terms for the study or not. So it's definitely something that we will discuss soon, and we will keep everyone updated about it, and we will definitely involve national leads in this decision, because you are the ones who have a general overview of how things are going in your country and how many centers have started all this process of registration and are not being able to take part in the 4 periods that were predefined.